Here we go. Irvin and Martha, Esther, Merle, and Philip, if you come up, take your place. So, as I was thinking about who to have on this panel, I asked some people, and some of them didn't work, and some of them were reluctant, but said yes, and I think one was drafted, and you might hear some of that this morning. But they have a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience in dealing with conflict, and they have handled it very well. And so my goal this morning is that we will learn nuggets to take with us. Am I blocking any of your view? That we would have nuggets to take with us that we could use in our relationships that could bring healing to those relationships as much as possible. So the first question I have for them, just to kick off, I asked two of them to share about a conflict they've had recently and how it was resolved. And so Martha's going to go first, and then Phil has one as well. So Martha? Yeah, turn the wireless on, make sure they're on.
So a number of weeks ago when I saw that this panel was in the bulletin, I thought, oh, good, I'm not on this one. And then a short time later, Irvin came to me and said, hey, Doug asked us to be in the panel. And I said, you said yes? He said, yes. I said, you didn't ask me. So
we are one, you know.
He knows I'm afraid to be in front of people. And I don't know why. So here I am. Drafted.
Was it resolved?
Yeah, it was resolved. Oh, so the other part of that story is that I heard a podcast by Dave Wheatus, and in that podcast he was introducing the new book he just wrote, and he said sometimes God asks us to do things that we're not comfortable with and that are hard, that we don't want to do, but it's good to move into that and to walk into those hard things because God is using that to prepare us for the next thing. So he encouraged living with courageous decisions so that we don't miss the next thing God has for us. So that was my decision.
So 3 weeks ago, we walk into church, and Martha says, you got to tell Doug, I don't want to do this. And she said, there's no other ladies on this panel. So Esther Glick walks in, and I said, Esther, well, we have an opportunity for you. And she said, give me 5 minutes to think about it. And so Martha's happy to be on with Esther by her side. That's how the conflict was resolved.
Okay, Phil, go ahead. Hey, you're on. You're on.
All right.
Thought you were.
There we go. So Doug asked me to tell this story. It's not really a conflict related, but it has to do with working with people. I work in construction, of course, and so deal with a lot of inspectors. And in the city of Lancaster, as many of you would know, inspectors are a lot of fun sometimes. I found that many people, including myself, would often view them as a frustration, somebody you just kind of had to deal with. And it just wasn't productive. So I started to change the approach that I used and view them as a partner and talk to them ahead of time, say, hey, we're going to be doing this. We're looking to do this right. We want to do this as well as possible. We want to do it, we want to make it easy for you. So the approach changed and it became, what can I do to make your job easier? What can I do to make this the best thing for the city of Lancaster or wherever you happen to be working possible? And it completely changed the interactions that I had with them. They became my friends. They became people that wanted to work with me. Then when I'm dealing with something, I'm trying to make it work, and it may be a bit of a question on the code, suddenly they're interested in my success. And that was just really powerful to me because it really, nothing changed. I'm still doing the same kind of work. They're still inspecting. Their boss didn't change. My boss didn't change. Our pay didn't change. Nothing changed. But it went from frustrating to, yeah, this inspector's kind of a cool guy. He's just a normal person living in Lancaster, and he happens to be an inspector, and we're partnering on this project. So that's been my approach, and it's been much, much more successful than the other way.
Very good. So we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So these questions are numbered, and if you want to say, hey, let's go back to number of so-and-so, we'll take questions at the end. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully we'll have time. So we're going to kick it off here. So they've picked or chosen, or we assigned questions that they'll take the first crack at it. Then it'll be open for the rest of the panelists to comment on the question as well. So first question. When you're in a conflict, sometimes the most difficult piece is how to initiate a conversation with the other party. How do you invite them to sit down and talk? What are some ways to begin a conversation, and what are some ways that are not helpful? So Phil's going to go first. Or was it? I have Phil. Go ahead.
All right, I thought that wasn't mine, but here we go. You just start. Often we're really afraid of what people are going to, there's something difficult. It's been bugging me for a while, whether it's at work or at church or in the family, whatever it may be. We think that it's going to be a big deal, because if there's conflict, if there's something that's really a problem, it probably is a big deal. But the longer you wait, the more emotion you get built into it, the more explosive that potential interaction becomes. If you say, hey, this is an issue, or maybe it's not, I don't know, but it feels like an issue to me, so if I can't get past it, let me just open my mouth and start talking and say, hey, this seems like an issue. Of course, prepare yourself a little bit, but just start. People love to solve problems, and when you come at it from that perspective, like, hey, this is a problem, we want to solve it, it's not like me versus you, how can we solve it together? That's the approach that I think works great and honors whoever the individual is that you're approaching, and it also keeps me as an important part of that. It's not like I'm the ornery guy that's coming and bringing a complaint. It's more like, hey, this is really bugging me. Maybe it's not even a problem, but if it is, how can we solve it? And turns out, coming from that perspective, people normally want to solve problems. Who wants to carry that weight?
Anyone else want to add to that?
So one of the first things, usually, okay, there's a problem, and usually your first response to the person is, okay, what's the problem? And the answer you about always get is, you're the problem, or they're the problem. The approach I like to take is say, come to them and say, I hear there's there might be some issues going on here. How can I help you? And that usually levels or changes the response to how to respond back to you. Because if they come right away, you're the problem, it just changes the whole dynamic of the conversation. At least I found it that way.
I compare it to bull riding. Who wants to ride a bull? Who dares to get on that crazy bull? It takes some Ben. Ben's a bull rider. Well, not many of us dare to ride the bull, get on his back, but it really, it takes courage to have a conversation, to begin a conversation. And we probably never really graduate in this part of life, how to do it just right. But if we dare to walk into it in the spirit of love, Galatians 6:1 says, if you see someone else have a fault, you should think about yourself as well. If you were in that situation, put yourself in those shoes. Consider yourself, lest you also be at fault sometime. So that's a good way to put it, but engage courageously.
I heard a hostage negotiator said one of the first things they do going into a hostage situation and talking to the hostage is, the question is, help me understand how we got to this point. And it kind of disarms them. It's not like, why are you doing, or what, or it's like, help me understand. And it brings a dialogue. So I thought that was helpful as well. Okay, let's move on to number 2. How do you deal with teenage children making decisions that you think are wrong? I don't think they're bad people. How do I navigate discussions that don't become arguments? How do we say what's on our hearts and still have a solid family? Martha.
We raised 6 of them, and it was our goal to allow them to ask hard questions and to not be threatened by them, to be a safe place for them to talk, because we knew that when they asked questions, they're also forming their belief system. And so it was important for us to hear well, listen well, and also release the outcome, because they may make choices that are different than we want them to. But the thing, I just heard Paul Tripp say yesterday that our goal is not behavior management, because if that is our goal, then when they leave the house, they may completely revert to everything. They may throw away everything we taught them. But if our goal is to bring them under the lordship of Christ, to capture their heart by the power and the glory of the gospel, then we pray that they will make those choices well, because we lose the battle if behavior management is our focus.
It's on, Esther.
So my daughter Julia, I live with them. She did the copy for me. And she said, Mom, she said, I can really connect with number 2. So she was telling me, and I said, write it in a text. And this is what she said. Here's my passionate ramblings. When I think of this question, I'm taken back to my story as a teenager. When I was 19 and found myself pregnant before marriage, never once did my mom give me Bible verses or say how I should have known better. Instead, she chose to love me unconditionally. Her love and kindness was Jesus to me. As parents, we raise and train our children to follow Jesus. But when they become teenagers and adults, they will undoubtedly make choices that we don't agree with, depending on the choice. Maybe say your feelings once, but more importantly, pray them to Jesus. Love them unconditionally, and trust that God will meet your children. All of our children need to find their own way to Jesus, because their story is not about us, but about them and Jesus. Their story may look different than we think it should, but that's okay, because God works in the broken.
I will also add that we don't have a reputation to protect. Jesus didn't. He made himself of no reputation.
To all your parents of teenagers and younger children, remember that you were young once too.
Any other comments? I think a lot of times if we go into parenting and keep relationship in mind, of having a relationship and keeping that relationship, I think it goes a long way in helping through the tough times. Okay, let's move on to number 3. How to resolve gaslighting or ghosting silent treatment from other parties. Irvin.
So what is gaslighting? It's a emotional manipulation of the situation, causing the other party to question their sanity or their integrity or their personhood, making them feel so much less than they really are, trying to really make them look ignorant. That's what gaslighting is, making the situation a lot worse. So I think of Proverbs 15:1. It says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. I think gaslighting and the silent treatment, it really, I mean, all conflict comes from selfishness, but this type of conflict really has some extreme selfishness connected with it. So the tendency could be for the person that's being attacked is to just try to keep the peace. Just make it go away. Whatever could make it go away. But conflict doesn't go away by an equal response or an aggravated response. You know, the Word of God instructs us to pursue peace. So we're to be peacemakers, not peacekeepers. So that's in this. Try to take away the fuel by having a soft answer, asking some good questions. Maybe there's questions that I could ask myself. Are there some quirky things about my personality or the way that I do stuff or say things? Is it my manners? Is it my tones? Is it my nonverbal communication that causes these triggers for this response to happen?
Phil, go ahead.
I would just say in a case where there's somebody's trying to gaslight you, kind of manipulate you, particularly if, like early in my life, I very much didn't like conflict. So I wanted to be nice, and somebody's saying something and kind of projecting something upon you, and you're kind of like, well, that must be the way I am. And sometimes, of course, we certainly want to hear what other people see, but if somebody's doing that and you're just like, hey, this is absolutely not true, like, be willing to, you don't have to have a fight about it, but be willing to stand up and say, hey, listen, no, that's not true. I'm happy to talk about this, but we're not going to talk about it on those terms, because it also comes with your own respect in who you are as a person. And so being able to, not confrontationally, but still being able to be very firm and say, listen, we're not going to have a conversation on that basis. I'm happy to talk about it. If you have an issue, let's talk about it, but it's not that way. Very simple. If you're going to try to manipulate me, I'll walk out of the conversation, and I'm happy to do that. Keep the drama out of it. Don't get offended. Don't take it personal. Just say, hey, I want to have a good conversation about it. This is what it takes, and then we can talk about it, because almost certainly I'm partly wrong. That's always the basis you start from. Like, I think 100% of the challenges I've been involved in, I like to assume that it's at least 50% my fault. And I'm happy to talk about it, but not to be kind of gaslit or manipulated and become the entirety of the problem.
It's amazing how many belief systems come out of being manipulated or gaslighted in us as young people and children, and even as adults. We can have belief systems that are totally skewed because of gaslighting and people trying to manipulate us. So it's huge. It's a big deal. And I like your answer there, Irvin and Phil. Any more comment on that? Okay. The mic.
I wrote the definition down, and this is what I wrote. A form of manipulation where one person causes another to question their perception of reality. Pretty clear.
Well said. Okay, number 4. How do you bring closure to conflict that does not end well so you don't carry it forward into another situation? Merle.
I'm going to say this about conflicts. They're a little like concrete. There's different degree of hardness, and like concrete, it's not if it's going to crack, but when or where. And conflicts are going to happen. We just always don't know when or where. So we look at the conflict, and initially what happens, you know, we both are right. At least we think we're right. And there's probably truth, we're probably both partially right. But, you know, character assassination happens. You know, we disrespect. You know, stuff's tossed back and forth. Trust doesn't end out well. And after a bit, you know, we say, we got to thinking, is that really how I am? Am I really an untrustworthy person? Am I disrespectful? And the conflict, we have triggers. There's triggers involved here. What we say triggers them, and what they say triggers us. At the end of the day, do we just go home and forget about it? No, it doesn't work that way. So, what I found out works best for me is understand who I am in Christ. You know, if we start believing the lies that are you know, portrayed by us, like we're not worthy, we're disrespectful, you know, if we start believing that, we're going to carry that into the next situation, into the next conflict. Despite the fact it may have not ended the way we thought it did, because, like Phil said earlier, neither of us are probably 100% right in this situation. But what we can learn, what we can move forward, we can understand the triggers that trigger us. We know what triggers us. We don't always know what triggers that person. But we understand the triggers that would trigger us moving forward to the next one. How do you bring complete closure to it? Well, for number one, we got to learn it does not define who we are, despite what's said about us. And if we can understand that, it helps us when we get involved with the next one. You know, because some of these questions kind of tie together, and I want to be careful. I don't want to move some into the next one. And just because it didn't end out the way we thought it did doesn't mean it did not end well. Bad conflicts are the problem I have with conflicts that don't seem to be resolved. Not only do they carry forward, they sever a relationship. Usually, most times, that relationship with that person is never where it's going to be, despite the fact that the conflict, you know, didn't go the well we should. But what I found out is the worst thing you can do is dig your heels in this thing and believe everything is being tossed at you, because moving forward it's just not going to work well in the next one. I don't know really how else to, you know, to say how to bring closure to it other than to understand the fact of who you are in Christ. Because until you can identify that, you know, you're always going to be carrying that moving forward.
Anyone else want to comment? Martha?
So we have been part of a situation where we were told to back off from the relationship, and which we honored, and then later we're told, well, the ball's in your court. So that's when we initiated conversation. But I recognized in that situation my tendency to want to fix and change things, and I realized that that's part of control. And so I've learned, am learning, that part of letting go of that fixing and changing, which we can't do, often we can't do, is to release and to let go. And then to ask the Lord to carry the weight and then trust him. And I asked Irvin, so what does it mean to trust the Lord? How do I trust him for something I've released to him? Because it may not work out like I want. He may not fix or change what I want to see. And he said it means to trust him for the outcome, whatever he chooses, because we know he's always good, he's still sovereign, and he always does what is right. So I keep doing that over and over again, just releasing, letting go, then trusting him for the outcome. And sometimes less is more, less words. Proverbs 10:19, he that restrains his lips is prudent, is wise. So sometimes less is more. And I've also learned to pray blessings, prayers of blessings over them. People who oppose us, pray, there's always prayers of blessings to pray. God, give them a love for your word. Help them to walk in humility before you. Teach them to love well. Bless what they do. Bless the work of their hands, and bless their home. Bless their marriage, and bless them to know you more. There's always blessings you can pray.
Sometimes it's good to ask ourselves, well, what am I feeling? You know, when it's over or it's not over, but it's closed. What am I left with? Am I frustration, anger, guilt, maybe disappointment for sure, shame, sadness? What am I left with? And then to bring those feelings, because we didn't fix the problem. We didn't come to resolution the way we wanted it to. So what do we do with it? The illustration of Jesus when he was on the cross, he said he blotted out the handwritings that were against us, the handwriting of offenses against us. And sometimes it's healthy or helpful to do a symbolic act. Maybe you write a letter and you tear it up. It's a symbolic act of letting go. You write it out, you let it go. Sometimes a verbal declaration, just personal verbal declaration. Look, I'm going to let this go. I'm going to forgive. I want to be Jesus in this situation. And to just verbalize it, not just think it, but verbalize it. So verbalization, our brains respond to symbolic acts in powerful ways, sometimes as strongly as actual actions. So our brain, really powerful muscle, very powerful tool that we can choose to let things go by acknowledging with certain symbolic acts.
One quick thing.
Yeah, just remember that the other party probably is experiencing a lot of the same emotions as you are, whether or not they would admit it, and never burn a bridge. I was talking to one of the more successful people that I know the other day, and this is something he said. He said, no matter what, never burn a bridge. It was purely business conversation, but it was kind of a very simple rule that I liked.
Very good. Number 5. How do I learn from conflict and grow without overthinking things and overcooking the scenario? I like that language, overcooking. Merle, I had you down for this one. I think I missed up the last one. Do you have anything for this one?
I shared some of the last time. So, again, a conflict arises, and the first thing that comes to your head is like, my rights were violated. My respect was, I was disrespected, you know. And I mean, unless you're different I am, I mean, we all get it initially. And again, like, and we have tendencies with it, you know. I got to go deal with this person. I mean, they're going to, I mean, I'm going to get blasted. I mean, I'm going to get called all sorts of bad stuff. I'm going to get, you know, everything I think is right is going to get, is going to be trashed, and, you know, a person I think I am is going to be trashed. And we just allow ourselves to play these things through in our mind and through in our mind. So I had to think about a scenario, and this goes back pretty many years ago. I was a young, I'm still young. I was a young guy at the time, but and one thing I'm going to speak for my father. My father's still living; he's 89 years old. And one thing I want to speak to about my father that I was able to learn through him. So when my dad moved to Southern Lancaster County 65 years ago, he was the first conservative Mennonite in that area. And one thing I always learned about my dad was his ability to get along with the natives. My dad got along with the natives very well, and one of the reasons he did is because he respected who they were. Belief system, throughout the belief system, I mean, one thing he did, he respected who they were, and they respected who my dad was. And that's one thing I learned from my dad. If you learn to respect people and learn to respect who they are, oftentimes it comes the other way, not always. But too many times we allow ourselves to thinking all this bad stuff, and we allow ourselves to get all, So back to my story. Then I was a young guy. I used to ride my wheeler down the fence row, around the end of the fence, into the pasture. But when I rode through the end, I had to ride through what I thought was our property. The neighbor guy thought was his yard, and he approached my dad one day. He's like, "Hey, that guy, riding through the yard, and I hollered at him one day, and he kept right on going, which I didn't know." Anyway, Dad comes home, and he says, "Hey, you go talk to him." And I'm like, who does he think he is? I mean, he's just a tenant there, That's our pastor. I'm going through all this stuff, and the guys, he's, I'm going to get blasted when I get there. I mean, I don't even know if I can, Anyway, I did what I had to do. I knocked on the fellow's door. I said, "Hey, I understand that you do not like me riding a wheeler here." And the guy's like, the whole thing changed. He said, "I don't really care you're riding a wheeler there." He said, "I just want to stop you that day and say, take it slow, and you just kind of snub me." So I thought the thing all wrong, and I allowed it to cook, and and in the story, it turned out pretty well. Actually, it turned out really well. So, too many times we overcook stuff till we burn it, and then we say it can't be corrected. So, what we learned is, oftentimes the first initial response is not the truth.
I like that, Merle. You overcook it, you burn it. Nothing good happens then. Okay, moving on. Number 6. Based on we are wounded in community and we heal in community, what is the role of Safe Church Community in trauma resolution and aftermath of healing versus a counselor? Phil.
I think this is the stickiest one, maybe. I don't know. Community should be about healing and life, and it seems often that's also where we get hurt the worst. I've experienced some of that really both ways. Community can be beautiful, and it can also be really difficult. I think that the place I realized the greatest portion of my challenges or problems came from when I felt like I got hurt by community was that I didn't value my own contribution enough. And I don't mean that in an egotistic way, but I was there, and I kind of expected people to believe the best about me, and then when they didn't, I felt like I was trying really hard, and when they didn't, I was offended. And I didn't have the courage to go have that conversation. And so this is maybe not a great analogy. Jeff Bezos says that stress isn't having a lot of work to do, it's carrying the weight of the things you know you should be doing but aren't. And I think that in the same way in conflict and in being hurt in community, what can happen is we begin to have challenges, and instead of dealing with them in a timely manner, going to somebody and asking the question, sometimes being willing to stand up and say, no, actually, we're not going there. That's, you know, if that's the way the relationship works, then I'm out. I think just establishing some boundaries and taking personal responsibility. So I had somebody, I had moved to Maine, and I was, 21 and full of life and ambition, and I was very optimistic and didn't know these people at all. And so I kind of stumbled into it thinking that it would be sort of like the community I grew up in. And it didn't work. It just simply didn't work. And I had floundered around and tried really hard. And at a certain point, I blamed people in the community for the hurt, because there was real hurt. And then I realized later that a lot of it had to do with me not taking personal responsibility and like standing up and saying, hey, there's a real problem here, and I'm not going to live this way. So either, I need to fix what I'm doing wrong, and we're going to find a way to make this work, or I'm out. And what I realized then was that 99% of that problem was me. That's not the same for everybody, but that's the kind of my experience in getting hurt in community. And I think that healing, a lot of it had to do with how I took responsibility, and I had to let go of blaming other people for the hurt and realize that I was a part of allowing that to happen, because I hadn't taken personal responsibility early on and kind of set some standards or some boundaries in those interactions. So a lot of it, I like to say that I'm my own worst enemy. I'm the person who can hurt myself worse than anybody else on this planet. I can do more damage, and when I come at it from that perspective, that really changed the level of pain that I felt for what had happened. Because it no longer was like this guy wanted to hurt me. It was like, hey, you know what, if I had learned to interact differently, to negotiate instead of just kind of allow somebody to project something upon me and sort of believe that, I would have never spent 3 or 4 or 5 years going down into that and continuing to carry that pain and frustration.
Okay. Any feedback? One person.
I'm intrigued with how the angel told Mary to go to Elizabeth when she was with child. That tells me that God is okay with women needing women. And I think the same for men, because Elizabeth had a husband who couldn't talk for 9 months. So he formed and endorsed that community, that little bond. I think that safe communities can be communities like small groups, prayer groups, even a Sunday school class. As we share openly and honestly with courage, it helps to normalize our situation. Oh, I'm not the only one that's struggling with this. I think I found the most help in community, small, safe community, even more than counselors per se. And it takes more courage to share with someone that knows you rather than go to a neutral person.
Very good. Moving on, number 7. Often the issue is not the real issue. How do I keep hope alive for redemption and growth alive in the middle of what looks impossible? Merle.
So, oftentimes the real issue in conflict is not the conflict itself. It's something that follows through. And I can kind of live through this here to a certain degree because of issues that come up with my especially my mother particularly, and how she keeps it bringing up stuff that is about us or things that happen that really is not true. And I keep thinking, why does she not trust me? What did I do that she don't trust me? Now, we could take the approach and say, well, I'm just going to cut you off. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm just going to move on. But yet, we have to understand that, that's not I'm not the issue. It's the issues that was carried through that you know, I'm sure I got issues I carry through myself out. So as soon as you cut off the relationship, I think we're done, you know, and there's no chance of coming back or no chance of getting back together, or very hard. We just have to learn to deal with what you know is true, and just to stay alive in the middle of it, even though it looks impossible that it will ever happen. I mean, this person asked this question probably wanted a better answer than that, but I don't know exactly how to address it any better. So, you know, that's all I'll say on that for now.
Any other comment?
Well, conflict is certainly systemic to the human experience. It's as old as the world. It will continue until Jesus comes. But there's so many things that trigger us. I'm going to take the liberty to say a few triggers. I've been around the block a while. And you know, here's a few things, just really quickly. Cabinet drawers, leftovers in the fridge, sugar intake, room temperatures, furniture arrangement, renovations, paint colors, toilet paper roll directions, light switches on or off, curtains open or closed, politics, Israel, religion, hygiene manners, body odors and sounds, closet arrangements, where to put the laundry clothes, the best way to open your envelopes, driving speed, yellow lights, slowing down. And this is a good one. Here's where Martha and I get into it sometimes, because when should you start slowing down for a stop sign or to turn?
So what's the real issue, Irvin?
Yeah, what is the real issue? So I'm trying to teach Martha how to be gentle on the brakes, right? We don't have to change our brake pads all the time. She thinks I'm being critical. So, you know, that's a big one. It's a trigger. Yeah, grocery shopping, general shopping, house buying, vehicle purchases, in-laws, appointment time arrivals, church service lengths, prayer lengths, table manners, sound or sleep machines, vacation destinations, restaurant choices, kid disciplines, how many kids, school choices, movie content, music choices, hobbies, spiritual disciplines, or lack of personal disciplines. You know, anything can trigger us, anything. It's not the real issue. The issue is not that. It's the selfish nature of our hearts. You know, really, the definition of conflict is the situations where people or ideas are in opposition to each other and how the outcome should happen. And it's going to be that way because we're human. So we need to learn to forgive and give in.
And without relationship, you have no impact. Moving on, number 8, some really good ones here. Within a family that has grown up with basic Christian values, yet as siblings, there are differences in what we would consider core values, such as divorce and remarriage, differences, views on sexuality, etc. We all know where each other stands on these issues. How do I express my view that I believe are biblical, yet have good family relationships? The other siblings have different views, yet they believe their view is biblical as well. So Martha, have you down for that one?
So first of all, I think we all need to determine our core values, know what they are, and have that be unwavering in them. So I have an extended family member who is choosing a lifestyle that is not biblical. And for years he felt a lot of judgment from me and didn't feel love. And the Lord convicted me about that, and I asked God, how can I move toward him, and how can I show my love, not approval, but love? And he told me to go into his shop and wipe up his floors, and I did it on my hands and knees, and he was moved. I did it several times, and in that way a relationship was built between us. And my goal is to love well so that when he's ready to make a change and to see the biblical way, that I'm a safe place for him to come back to. I also recognize this, that love and truth walk together, hand in hand. So it's not just, love, and just tolerate and accept. Not that. It's loving as Christ would love, but also speaking the truth. So, yeah, I learned a lot through that. Now he comes to my house a lot, and we can talk for an hour about things that matter. But I'm still praying.
It's powerful, Martha. Bless you. Any other comments?
It was shared in Sunday school this morning. I think Steve, when he talked about the woman at the well, how Jesus loved her, but yet he also addressed the issue. And I admit I have a hard time doing that well. But, we're all going to be faced with somebody in our life sooner or later that lives a lifestyle that we don't totally agree with. But depending how we approach it or how we deal with it, it's going to make a difference if there is a relationship moving forward or not. It becomes very tricky. I think if we know the person well, we can understand, how they will handle your reaction. If we don't know the person well, it makes it harder. But to me, I always value relationships more so than taking a hard line on some of the issues.
Okay. For the sake of time, I want to move on. This was a big question, so it has multiple slides. If I get my feelings hurt and get offended by what another Christian friend did or said, but I don't really consider what they did as sin, how do I know if I should just talk to the other one who offended me or just try to settle the matter between me and God? Could I talk to a trusted friend about it? Some possible situations where this could happen, I feel like a friend is telling another some not nice things about one of my siblings or a close friend. Or if I was not invited to an activity where most of my friends were invited. B, there's a verse that says, love covers a multitude of sins. So do I just try to love the one who I feel offended by? 1 Corinthians 13:7 says, love bears all things, endures all things. Do I just endure this offense, or do I tell the person how I feel by what they did or said? Phil.
That is a really long question, but I think it's important. I don't know where this came from for me, but I know, so the first one is, suppose I don't get invited to something that most of my friends got invited to. And we love to be included, we love to be involved, and so if a lot of our close friends get invited to something and we somehow didn't, that can be kind of offensive. But I think taking personal responsibility for my feelings and making choices rather than reacting is the important thing. We can react and we can sit at home and mope and sulk, or you can take initiative and say, hey, you know what? I could be sad tonight, or I could go out and do something nice for somebody, or maybe just something I enjoy. To me, that's a practical way to deal with that, because it takes sort of the offense out of it and just says, hey, I'm going to deal with life. That is life. I mean, people are going to hurt our feelings. Mine get hurt sometimes. And, am I so important that it's really important that nobody possibly hurts my feelings? No. I mean, I'm sure I hurt other people's feelings sometimes and don't realize it. And so if you think of yourself as kind of just a normal part of a normal group of people, and then you say, hey, maybe they didn't think of it, or who knows, maybe there was a reason, but making a scene out of it isn't going to change anything. It's not going to make the situation better. That's kind of the way I would handle that. It's maybe oversimplified, but I just say don't be offended. It's pretty simple. Because what's that going to change, right? You're just going to feel bad and sit at home and sulk and maybe go talk to your friends, and they're like, oh, no, we didn't mean to not invite you. We just had a limit of people and we couldn't get everybody in. that would be sort of like the first one I would have to say. And I'm a little bit uncomfortable with, do I just try to love the one who I feel offended by? We should try to love, but I think we should look at things and realize that, try to love and cover something. I think we should reason and rationalize to some degree and say, like, okay, first of all, I don't think they meant this. If there's a close friend and I'm certain they did, then I'm going to go talk to them about it. Not because I think they were absolutely wrong, because I want to make sure. And then probably 99% of the time you're going to discover that there was nothing to it. That's sort of my take on it. And yeah, you genuinely want to love people, but try to kind of steer away from that mushy, well, I'm just going to love them anyhow. It's not really that helpful. Try to respect them. Try to remember that I also have faults that people have to have patience with. And so kind of takes the pain away, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm just kind of normal. Everybody else is too. And by the way, that's my friend, and I love my friend. End of conversation.
Any other comment? Okay. Well, that's all the questions. Now it's time for Q&A. If you have questions burning that you don't want to overcook, now's your time to ask. So we have a few minutes here of Q&A. Then I've asked them to give a nugget of wisdom they want to leave with us as we wrap up. So any questions on any of the numbers? We'll just flip back to the slide and revisit it. Raise your hand. Cam has one. Any questions? Vernon. The counselor's asking a question. That's scary.
I just want to make a comment on number 6. Because I'm a counselor, I think that's probably why I'm saying this. I think community is powerful, but there's also moments of time. I'm just thinking of Darlene and I in our own experience in our marriage, where we needed a counselor, even though we had lots of learning and history and counseling. We actually needed a counselor that had some understanding of what we were facing, so to help us sort it. So I guess I just wanted, community is powerful, but there's also a need for a counselor. I think that's just a comment, because I think if we would have tried going to maybe close friends or community, it probably would have created sides where we needed someone to be objective and stand back from both of us and walk us through this. So, just a comment.
Thanks, appreciate it. Someone else?
Sorry, I don't have a question, but I have a testimony
Okay.
that concerning conflict. Someone told my cousin something that about me that was said about her, and I didn't hear from her for a while, little while, but she came to me right away, and she came to me right away she actually called me and said, "Hey, I heard you said this about me. Is it true?" So I thanked her right away, because that's actually not something I said about her. And so I guess I was just that situation really put in my heart, like, if you have any questions about what someone else thinks. Just go ask. So Phil, thank you for, admonishing people. Just ask, just go, just do it, because it just breaks down walls. And I was very thankful because I was then able to explain what exactly I did say or did not say.
Perfect. Someone else.
This isn't a question, but Merle, I just appreciate what you said about relating to your mom. I needed that. I think you used the words stay with what's true when you can't stop the ongoing. And yeah, in my own experience right now, I feel like I needed that, so thank you.
Thank you, Darlene.
I don't want to say I think I did it well, but initially, when it came down to dealing with my mom and dad, my two oldest siblings walked out on the meeting because they got frustrated. I stuck around, not because I thought I knew how to do it, but I knew what needed to be done. And if all the siblings would have just threw up our hands and walked out, I look back and think, where will we be at today? So that being said, we got to be willing sometimes to, view the situation, and take. I always said this before. I don't like to be shot full of holes, because that you slowly bleed out. But you got to be willing to take some shots and understand it's not you. It's not you. It's issues that are a lot bigger than that. So just thought I'd share that.
Okay. Is there any other burning? Jensen.
So this one's for more Martha. On your core beliefs, see if I can say this right. If your relationship with Christ never is at a point where you can say, oh, I have enough, and with getting a better relationship, okay, it's obviously never ending, you understand things in the Bible differently, you continue to get understanding and wisdom from Christ, how do you have core beliefs that you always stick to? Or can those core beliefs change? And if so, how do you have core beliefs? You have things that you believe very strongly about, but how much are you allowed to say that, or how often can you change those in a sense, if that makes sense?
You want to answer that? No, not yet. No, Martha's. Go ahead.
You were asking Martha, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because she had that question. Repeat it.
She said, I'm supposed to answer for her. That's a conflict of interest. Now, God surely can continually change us to learn more, to grow, even to shift our opinions or maybe beliefs, what we would sometimes say are core beliefs. I don't think anyone should have any apologies for their core beliefs of what God has instructed them from His Word and to live by. However, core beliefs differ from people to people and how they interpret and understand the Scriptures. A simple answer would be to say that everyone has to give account of themselves to God. So you have to be true to your own conscience, you have to be true to what God has instructed you, and let the other person's guess, core values, a way of living, stand before God. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think we want to make sure that our core values and our core beliefs are based on Scripture, because Jared, when he had devotions this morning, the question that came to Eve from the enemy was, yea, hath God said? So we want to make sure that our foundation is solid on Scripture, and we don't go along with the culture in question just because of culture or times changing or things around us changing, and so then we change our belief system because everything around us is changing. So it might be good to list the core values that we have and then find a verse in Scripture that backs that up.
Okay, I think we'll wrap up with their final bit of wisdom they want to give to us this morning. So Esther, kick it off.
In our time of marriage counseling, we were given a phrase to let the other know, I need to talk. The phrase was, I need to walk to the lake tonight or tomorrow or in a week, whatever time you want to put in there, letting the other know there was a serious discussion coming. This gave space on both sides to prepare. I used it twice. My honey never used it.
Martha.
I love the questions that Jesus asked. He said several times, what do you want me to do for you? And he said, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do the things I tell you? What are the things he told us? We know to love God first and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So saying that, I have come to realize that through some really hard things that we have walked through in the last years, it's ongoing. At one point, it was a very defining moment when I realized that, hey, this is not about fixing or changing them or making everything right, making the relationship right. I think this is about what God wants to develop in me and look at the things that he wants to break in me and to ask him to not waste the suffering, to be so aware of that.
We are all broken, and there's a longing for Eden, to return to Eden, to the perfect environment of peace and wholeness. So that should be our pursuit with each other. Some of my personal practices that I try to implement, and a few of them would be fully rely on God, because this is bigger than any of us to resolve conflicts. Secondly, hear out all sides before judging. Don't look at the situation, hear all sides in conflict. And then dream on when matters seem on hold. When nothing seems to work, keep dreaming, keep believing.
Sometimes I think King Solomon has had a lot of conflicts in his life, because you read through Proverbs, it talks about a kind word, a slow word, and a lot of that does work, and I think God allows conflicts to come in our lives to build character in us, and because sometimes we're saying, like, I don't understand this. This doesn't make sense. But as time goes on, you look back on it and you say, I understand now why I went through this. Or, and you say, this is how that turned out. I think it helps us in the next conflict going forward. I was going to wear a T-shirt this morning, but I got talked out of it. It simply said, just to save time, let's just assume I'm always right. Conflicts take time, and time sometimes that we're don't want to take, but we got to understand there's two sides, and both of us feel violated in some way. And if we can understand that, it helps us, I think, to move forward to, God could have made us all the same, and we can't use a cookie cutter in conflicts because they're all different. All dynamics are different. All the people are different. All the scenarios are different. But I think if we keep an open heart to God, and God will convict us of things, things to say, how to address it. If there's restitution that's got to be made, we got to be willing to do that too. So just some thoughts I'd share, what I experienced in my life.
I recently read a book, was recommended to me by one of my friends. It's Surrounded by Idiots. And it sounds kind of bad when you stop and think about it, but the focus of the book is to learn to understand people, because we can look at the people around us and say these people are idiots. If we're particularly, some people have a very, sort of like a strong personality and they want to get things done, we can feel that way, but we should make it a lifestyle to try to understand how to work with people. It's not because not everybody's going to be, a negotiator, a counselor. You might say, well, I'm not a counselor, or I'm not a negotiator, I don't have to learn that. The reality of it is that each of us want to live a productive and healthy life. And stop looking at the conflicts in the short term and look at it more like, what could I change in the underlying basic way that I deal with people so that I don't end up in these situations? How could I approach things earlier on so that I have less kind of flashpoints, like really difficult things, and it's more like the lifestyle that we've adopted and the way that we've learned to work with people has become such that it greatly minimizes it. And then when you have a conflict, it's a real one, and then you have to really give it a lot of attention. And so personal responsibility, remembering that I'm always a part of the problem. The other person feels the same pain, almost certainly, or frustration as I do, and sees as much fault in me as I see in them, and always be willing to say, I'm sorry. If you want to do business with people, if there's somebody that simply can't say, if they can make a half-hearted apology, but they can never say the words, I'm sorry, never to trust them too much. That's just a simple rule to go by. And by extension, that means I have to be willing to say that and mean it.
Takeaways: avoiding it makes it worse. The goal is understanding and not to be right. Silence is not the same as resolution. Intent does not negate impact. That's something I just want to leave with you all. So thank you all. Let's give them a hand, the panel. Thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability. Merle?
I just want to say something quickly. Just pray for this group this week, because the very thing we talked about this morning, the very thing we thought we had conquered, is going to hit us head on, and we're going to forget everything we thought we knew.
How true. But thanks for being willing to share your stories and your experiences, and God bless you all. Let's stand together for closing prayer. Lord, thank you so much for this time to be together, just to learn from each other. Lord, this subject of conflict can be so hopeless sometimes in our lives, and so overwhelming and all-consuming, and it just clouds our thinking and our life. And Lord, I just pray for healing and restoration in all of relationships here today, that you would meet each need, meet them in the middle of the conflict, lead them to a solution and a way forward, and to relationships and restoration, Lord. Thank you for Esther and for Martha and Irvin and for Merle and for Philip, Lord. I pray protection for them this week, that you would just give them peace and in the midst of whatever they're going to face. Walk with them, give them a word, give them the sense of your presence this week as they go. So guide us all, Lord. We look forward to our time together as a church in these Sunday mornings, and now as we go our separate ways, be with us and guide us. And we give you all the honor and glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for being here. You're